across the country are looking to San Francisco to see what's going to happen. Are Democrats, in essence, fed up with Democratic policies? I think we're now going to get to our live reporter. Is that right? Stephanie Sierra, live with us now. She is at a watch party where Chesa Boudin may or may not come out and speak. Steph?
That's right, Liz. We have still not heard yet if Chesa will, in fact, speak tonight, depending on either outcome. However, we do know many of his supporters are here at the watch party, which is at the Ramp, a restaurant right near Chase Center. And I want to step out and show you it's really come alive in the last 20 minutes. People, supporters were cheering as they were walking in, some holding signs. The makeup of the crowd here, really a mix of mainly Democrats, even some Republicans, including representatives from his big support group, the ACLU, the California Democratic Party, and several San Francisco supervisors. We're told Reverend Jesse Jackson may be in attendance tonight as well. It's unclear if Boudin will give a speech, as we just said, but we can say for certain both he and his supporters remain confident.
Feeling really excited, really optimistic. Everywhere we go, we've got people yelling out their support, telling us they casted their ballots today. I know a lot of our support's coming in late in the race on Election Day. Some of those votes won't be in the initial tallies that get released, but I'm super optimistic and energized. I've been all over the city today, from Balboa to the Sunset to the Mission. Obviously, we're out here on Geneva right now. Everywhere we go, people are beeping, they're taking selfies, they're telling us they already voted against the recall. They want to keep the right to choose who their district attorney is. They don't want that right taken away from them. And they're following the lead of the Democratic Party, of the San Francisco Labor Council, California nurses, public school teachers, and all of the different groups that have endorsed us that voters trust. I'm hoping for a big win, but last time around in 2019, it took until Saturday for us to be able to officially declare victory. It may take a few days this time around as well.
And one of Boudin's many supporters who is here tonight is Mara Math. I want to introduce her. Mara has been a Boudin supporter since 2019, when he was elected as one of the main faces of the progressive prosecutor movement. And Mara, can you walk me through why you're here tonight and why you had such early support for Boudin?
I think that Chesa Boudin is a very smart and committed progressive person, and what we've been doing hasn't been working. So he also has firsthand experience of the system and the damage it can do to families. He grew up with his own parents in prison. And I think that's given him a special understanding. And they're now talking about parental diversion, where someone is given an option to go into, I think, some parenting classes and other things, which I don't know all the details of, so that their family can be kept together, when otherwise they would just be languishing in jail.
Now, the latest polls from Boudin's own campaign show he's losing by at least 10 points. There is that margin, though, 14% still undecided. How are you feeling tonight?
Cautiously hopeful. Cautiously hopeful. There are a lot of people supporting, and we know that the mail-in ballots tend to be, the earliest mail-in ballots tend to be conservative. So we'll see. There are a lot of union people behind Boudin. There are a lot of other communities behind him.
Right. Well, you know, I think at this point, too, we were talking earlier about many of Boudin's critics who say he is too soft on crime, you know, pointing to a lot of those viral videos we have seen unfold in our city across the past year. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's ludicrous to blame Chesa Boudin for that. The crime problem has existed since before he was born here in San Francisco. And he's not the only linchpin in the system. The police first have to make an arrest. Actually, first they have to accept a report, which, just in my personal acquaintance, I can cite 20 anecdotes where the police have refused to take a report or tried to discourage someone from filing one, or where they have said to them, oh, it won't do any good. Where they give an excuse for not doing their jobs by saying they're demoralized by Chesa, which doesn't say much for their professionalism.
Yeah, well, it's a point you make, Mara, that's an important one, certainly one that Boudin supporters have argued, not only impacts from the pandemic, but the inaction of what he says is inaction from San Francisco police. So yeah. I appreciate your time.
You have an arrest before you can prosecute. Yeah. And also for things like diversion, a judge has to sign off on it,
Yeah. Mara, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time with us. All right, well, the first round of results coming in just about 15 minutes from now. We'll be tracking it here live. Back to you.
Steph, fascinating to hear from her and to hear from the district attorney tonight, because something we hear repeatedly from him and many of his supporters are that recalls are actually the problem, and that there needs to be reform to the recall process, and that it's a way for Republicans that have a hard time winning in California, especially in a place like San Francisco, of being able to kind of skirt their way in. And there is another proposition on the ballot, Prop C, that could change future recalls in San Francisco. Can you tell us about that and what that might look like if it passes?
Yeah, it's very interesting, Liz. Prop C would prohibit whoever is the appointed replacement if Boudin were to be successfully recalled. That person would not be able to run for election come November. So political analysts have argued this is unconstitutional. It is really prohibiting and limiting, in many cases, the political future for whoever this appointment will be. And in some respects, political analysts have said it's just not fair. So we haven't seen any polling for Prop C, so it's unclear where it stands. But of course, as it comes in tonight, we'll be looking closer at it and the implications.
We will. All right, Steph, thanks very much. We'll come back to you shortly. Along Lombard Street near the San Francisco Marina District, recall supporters are gathering tonight.
Yes, and ABC 7 News reporter Tim Johns is there with a former prosecutor who has come out against her former boss, Tim.
Yeah, that's right, Dan and Liz. Now, doors opened here at Del Mar at 8 o'clock, and since then, the crowd has just grown. And as you can see behind me, there's really a good number of people out here. I'm also joined just now by Jade, who's one of the volunteers on the Vote for H campaign. Jade, I just have to ask you, why have you been out here volunteering your time for this the past couple of months?
I'm out here because I care about my community. I care about the Asian community. I care about San Franciscans who feel like their lives have been in danger because since Chesa has been in office.
And have you yourself or any of your family members felt that way?
Yes, I have been physically assaulted in downtown. My mom has been verbally harassed in the streets. If you ask anyone in here, someone has had some experience within the last year, and we're sick and tired of it.
And, I've got to ask you, we haven't gotten the initial results yet. Polls just closed about half hour ago, 45 minutes ago. Are you optimistic that you're going to see the results that you and your colleagues here are hoping for?
I'm extremely optimistic. When we were doing visibility today, we got a lot of honks, a lot of positive energy. So I can only hope for the best at this point.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jade. And Dan and Liz, like I said, we are awaiting those initial results, and we're going to be here to get the reaction from this crowd when they roll in. But for now, I'm going to send it back to you guys.
Tim, thanks very much. Let's continue with some of the other races we're watching very closely. Voters in several Bay Area counties have a district attorney's race on their ballot. Here are the results for Alameda County. Pamela Price has 40%. Terry Wiley has 32%. Keep in mind, unless someone gets more than 50% of the vote, the top two vote getters go on to November. No matter who ultimately wins here, Alameda County will be getting its first black district attorney. So this is in so many respects a historic vote. And there are four real candidates in this race that we're watching very closely. Pamela Parker is Mary Knox, 58%. Diana Becton has 42% in Contra Costa County. Diana Becton is the incumbent. Mary Knox has come on very strongly. Diana Becton has faced some serious criticism and some serious heat in this race. Mary Knox has 58% of the vote at this point, with 58,000 votes cast on her behalf. Now, let's go to Solano County. Incumbent Krishna Abrams is running against one opponent. And so far, so good for Krishna Abrams, 62% of the vote over Sharon Henry. This is the district attorney's race in Solano County.
Also in the South Bay tonight, 7 candidates are vying to be San Jose's next mayor. Right now, current Santa Clara County Supervisor Cindy Chavez and San Jose City Council member are the top 2 vote getters. And as Dan's been mentioning, unless someone gets more than 50% of the vote, the top 2 will go on to November.
That's right. And for more on the front runners, let's go now to ABC 7 News reporter Amanda Del Castillo, live from a registrar's office. Amanda?
Yeah, Liz and Dan, I have to first talk about the activity happening right now. In the last 15 minutes, we've seen crews here start intercepting ballots collected from across Santa Clara County. It's happening slowly, but it is happening. And after speaking with voters, it seems all eyes are on San Jose's mayoral race tonight. And even with the anticipated low voter turnout, San Jose residents are nominating candidates, 2 of them who will move on to November. Tonight's outcome will no doubt shape the future of the nation's 10th largest city. Voters were given the power to decide who should fill current Mayor Sam Liccardo's seat and also decide half of its city council members. The top 4 mayoral candidates include 3 current council members, Raul Perales, Dev Davis, and Matt Mahan, and County Supervisor Cindy Chavez. Among the top priorities for each candidate, homelessness, affordable housing, crime, and more. Ahead of Election Day, we caught up with top candidates about what's driving them.
You know, I'm the only one born and raised here in San Jose. Grew up in a working class immigrant family over in West San Jose.
I am running to bring honesty and integrity back to our city government and to make San Jose the safest big city in America again.
I just want to see a city that's safe, clean, thriving, and creates opportunity for everyone.
It's important that we not only have people who are experienced, but people who have a track record of success.
San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo has been in office since January 2015. His term is up, and there's a full list of 7 candidates, as you'd mentioned, who have applied for the job. Now, a reminder, the top 2 who get the most votes tonight will face each other in the November election. Back to you.
Okay, Amanda, let's talk quickly about Measure B that really could impact the next mayor of San Jose in a big way.
Yeah, so if Measure B passes, it would move the mayoral election from the gubernatorial election cycle to the presidential election cycle, and that would begin in 2024. Now, those who are in support of Measure B say that it'll encourage more people to come out and actually vote during a mayoral election. Others worry that if it's passed, local issues may be overshadowed by national issues. So we'll have to wait and see. For now, I'm reporting live in San Jose. Amanda Del Castillo, ABC 7 News.
Okay.
Thank you, Amanda.
Joining us now for some insight on tonight's races that we're following is a San Jose State professor and political science expert, Melinda Jackson. Hi, Melinda. Can you hear us?
Yes, good evening.
Hey, great to be with you as always. Thank you for coming on. As you watch some of, let's start more broadly, because I want to get to some of the specifics in a minute, but as you watch what's happening here in California, across the country, lots of states are voting today, and it really could have a big impact. We're watching particularly District 15 here, but it could have a big impact on who controls the House in 2023. What are your thoughts as you look at what's happening in California and around the country?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're definitely seeing the start of, the midterm race that we're going to see in November. Usually we see the president's party lose seats. So if that happens, the Republicans could easily gain control of both the House of Representatives and the Senate possibly. So that would make a huge difference in terms of party control in Washington and, what President Biden might be able to do. We do have some competitive races here in California that may impact that total vote count. In other parts of the country, we're really seeing some interesting races play out in these primaries with the presidents who have been candidates who have been endorsed by former President Trump, sometimes winning and sometimes losing their races. So that's a really interesting thing at the national level.
Yeah, but I know we're going to move on to something else, but just a quick follow-up here, Melinda. How much of this will be a referendum on, it's always about timing, right? We have a recent surge in COVID cases around the country, gas prices out of control, baby formula shortage, stock market that's really faltering and concern about the economy. How much of that will fall on the Democrats and President Biden?
Well, presidents always get, blamed for the bad stuff and not always get credit for the good stuff. So particularly with regard to the economy, I think a lot of Americans, inflation, gas prices, those supply chain issues all of those things are really top of mind right now. And so it very well could be influencing how they're thinking about their vote choices and the Democrats. On the other hand, we have the Supreme Court decisions coming up, and what happens with the Roe v. Wade decision may be a big factor going into the fall as well.
Mm-hmm.
Melinda, let's talk about some of these district attorney races, because obviously we're following the big district attorney recall race in San Francisco, but many counties in the Bay Area tonight are voting for a district attorney. And it feels like there's the same tension in each county. Do you want a progressive prosecutor who's going to reform the criminal justice system, or do you want someone who's going to crack down on crime? What's your take on the electorate right now when it comes to district attorneys and the criminal justice movement?
Really interesting development, because these types of races didn't tend to get much attention, right. And there was a big incumbent advantage. So we're actually seeing these challenges now, and we're having this debate about what is the best approach toward public safety and appropriate punishment and rehabilitation, as well as the racial justice implications of these things. So we're actually seeing some really interesting races here in San Jose and some other counties, and obviously the recall of Chesa Boudin, attempted recall. We don't know yet what the outcome is in San Francisco. So this is a really hot issue that we definitely see playing out in California. I think because we are so democratic as a state, we're really kind of pushing the boundaries perhaps of how far people are willing to go in terms of supporting progressive policies when it comes to prosecution.
Yeah, I would submit, Liz, it's a great point. I would submit it's maybe the Boudin effect, because as you suggest, Melinda, most of the time people don't pay close attention to district attorney races, and they are this time around the Bay Area. And I would submit maybe largely because of all of the publicity around Chesa Boudin and his getting, fairly or unfairly, a lot of blame for the crime problem in San Francisco, and it then extends out to other areas of the community.
Yeah, and this is also something a little unique to California, because it is so easy to put a recall on the ballot. So this is a new tactic that we're really seeing with the recall of the school board members earlier this year, and now the attempted recall of Chesa Boudin, the unsuccessful attempted recall of Gavin Newsom last year. We're seeing this recall tactic being used more frequently.
We're still waiting on the results, the first results to come in from San Francisco, and we'll get an indication of where things stand. A lot of the polling has shown things not looking good for the district attorney. If he is recalled, there's going to be a lot of national headlines across the country tomorrow about, Democrats are fed up with Democrats, and what is the future of the progressive prosecutor movement. Do you think those are fair takeaways for the national media to make?
And hey, before you answer, we just got some results, Liz, just now. 61% yes on the recall, 31% no. Is that correct? Is that what? 38% no. Okay. Interesting, Liz. So that's what we had indicated might happen. That was some of the polling, 61% to 39%, 61% saying yes, recall Chesa Boudin. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to interject
then, Melinda,
that.
When you're seeing that he is at this time going to be recalled if these results hold, what can we take or glean from that nationally?
Well, I think it is fair to the extent that San Francisco is known as, one of the most liberal, most progressive cities in the country politically. So if, a progressive district attorney can be recalled in San Francisco, it really does send a message that perhaps, the pendulum had swung a little too far to the left, and the public wants a little bit more focus on traditional approaches to law and order. We'll see, but it is looking like if this recall is successful, it will definitely be symbolic in terms of, perhaps showing that voters are not willing to go completely to the furthest side of the progressive positions and the so-called defund the police position.
Right. And I think also people maybe just want to send a message, and this might be the best outlet for them to do it right now. Melinda, thank you so much. We're going to check in with you in just a moment.
All right, thanks. And stand by if you would, Melinda. And in fact, we may, if we have time, we're going to go back to Chesa Boudin. He's supposedly going to speak in just a couple of minutes, we hope.
Yeah.
But again, the results at this moment that are in, these early results, 61% saying yes, recall Chesa Boudin. We understand he is going to speak. Are we ready to go to Chesa Boudin or not yet? Not yet. All right, so if we can, let's go back to Melinda for a moment. Melinda, I want to ask you if she's still with us. Yeah, okay, Melinda, thanks. Let's move past Chesa Boudin for just a couple of minutes, and I want to talk to you about what really are dismal voter turnout numbers. Registration wasn't bad, something like 81% of people registered, but the voter numbers coming in were expected to be extremely low, always tough in an off-year election. But what do you attribute that to?
Well, this election just isn't as exciting as the last one was.
Yeah, that's true.
We did see record turnout last time. So, primary elections always have lower turnout, and especially, again, in a place like California where the Democratic Party is so dominant, even though we have this top two primary, people aren't as engaged in, voting at the primary stage. I'm sure turnout will be higher in November, but unfortunately, it's always a shame when we don't have good turnout, because it means that the results are less representative of the whole community. We've done a lot of things to try to make it as easy as possible for people to vote, including mailing every registered voter a ballot that they can fill out at home and put in the mail or drop off at a ballot a box or a polling place. And yet, the election still needs to be engaging to people. And without a big race like the governor being very competitive this year, I think that's why we're seeing the low numbers.
Just nothing really that sizzling hot and exciting.
Right. Although you would have thought the San Francisco race would have drawn out more people, and it'll be interesting to see what those final numbers are, because I think as of this weekend, it was about maybe 20%.
In San Francisco?
In San Francisco,
yeah, right.
Early voters was about 20%, whereas statewide it was about 13%. So you are seeing more engagement, but not that much more engagement. Let's talk where you live, down south in the South Bay in Santa Clara County, the San Jose race. What are some of the major issues there that are driving people to the polls? Is it homelessness? Is it crime? What's driving that race?
Yeah, definitely. Here in San Jose and Santa Clara County, it's homelessness has been a very visible issue. Homeless numbers have increased, and we definitely see it around the community. Affordable housing, really big. And crime, there's definite concern about that as well. So I think those are the big issues. And, with both a mayoral race, some hot races on the San Jose City Council, and the DA race, we have some interesting results to look for down here.
Okay, and here's a look at some in Santa Clara County to that point. The San Jose mayor's race, Dev Davis has 10% of the vote. Raul Perales has 8% of the vote. Again, this is just 11% of the vote precincts reporting at this moment. The district attorney, Jeff Rosen, has 60%. The incumbent, Daniel M. Chung, has 23% of the vote. Again, this is in Santa Clara County District Attorney. More attention, as we've been talking about, on district attorneys this year because of the Chesa Boudin case.
And as we said that, we're just getting in from ABC News, reportable here that ABC News is projecting that Proposition H in San Francisco has passed. People have voted yes. San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Boudin will be recalled. And
that's big news. That was the expectation going into tonight. But that is certainly big news, and we understand that we may hear from Chesa Boudin within the next few minutes. We'll carry that if we do. Reaction to that, Melinda? It wasn't a surprise in terms of polling, but boy, there was an enormous amount of money spent and commercial airtime spent trying to get him recalled.
Yeah, I do think it shows the power of money in this process. This was a very well-funded recall campaign, and hearing that message over and over again, really blaming Chesa Boudin for all of these, public safety issues and concerns that people have is maybe not fair. Obviously, he's not individually responsible for all of that, And he also hasn't been in office that long, halfway through his first term. So normally, we would wait for somebody to fill out their term, give them a little bit more time to implement their plans. But again, with these recalls that we're seeing, I think this will definitely encourage more recalls in the future since it seemed to work.
Yeah, interesting that there was also a great deal of money spent in the Chinese community on ads to recall Chesa Boudin. Of course, there was certainly a number of many anti-Asian hate crimes and violence committed in San Francisco, and that community was targeted by the pro-recall, the anti-Chesa Boudin crowd trying to get him recalled and pinning some of that squarely on him.
Yeah, and I think those concerns are real and fair to address. However, we did see that the Asian American community in San Francisco was definitely a big part of the pro-recall camp in terms of really focusing on those concerns that are affecting their community so directly.
So what does this say now about how you think the Democratic, can we glean anything, as we talked about before, for the Democratic Party? Are they going to watch this tonight? Is President Biden going to watch this tonight, these results, and have a little gut check about the future of the Democratic Party?
Yeah, I think that could be a fair response. Certainly, Chesa Boudin was not the party-endorsed candidate and, not supported by the mayor. He was chosen by the voters. He was farther to the left, and now we're seeing the voters have changed their minds just a couple years later. So I do think that it will, cause Democrats in Sacramento and in Washington to really think about strategies going into the midterm elections in November in terms of trying to find that balance between solid progressive policies that Democratic voters will support, but not going so far to the left that you really get that backlash and start losing those folks who may be more in the middle.
All right, Melinda Jackson, thank you so much for being here and for offering all of your insights to us. If you can, stand by, but if you have to go, that's okay, and we appreciate it so much. We appreciate your time.
We do indeed. Don't go, Melinda. Stand
Don't
by.
leave us.
We appreciate it.
Yeah,
all right, let's move on now to ABC 7 News reporter Tim Johns, who is reporting on the Chesa Boudin recall vote, which we just now have confirmation from ABC News that Chesa Boudin will be recalled. Tim.
Yeah, Dan, I've got to tell you, once those initial results came in, there was a very loud cheer here in the Del Mar bar. We even saw some folks taking some shots. I'm not going to lie to you. And I'm joined here right now by John. John, tell me, what was your initial reaction when you did hear that the DA is going to be recalled?
I wasn't surprised, but very ecstatic by this victory. And it's really San Francisco coming together and saying we've gone too far on certain issues. We have to do a better job. And I speak as a crime victim myself, being disappointed with the office and not really feeling that they had the best interests of all of San Francisco at heart. We have a lot of work to do on a lot of the issues that have come up over the last few years, but this is a way for San Franciscans to be able to say, we want to feel safe in our community, we want justice, and right now that hasn't been occurring.
And I was talking to you off camera. I know you love this city. Now that Mr. Boudin is going to be out of office, are you optimistic that San Francisco can take the steps that you want to see it take?
Well, the same way with the school board of people coming together after a recall. We have to do that here. Get the good ideas, get them in place. We don't know who the next district attorney will be. We know that Proposition C is losing, so that means that new district attorney will have the opportunity to be able to get things done. We need change. We don't need a caretaker. So this is an opportunity for change. San Francisco has been known for change. So we think this is a very optimistic day and a just result.
Awesome. John, thank you so much for your time. And guys, we're about to have a victory speech here, so I'm going to run and do that really quickly. I'll send it back to you guys really quickly in the studio.
Okay, great job, Tim. Thanks very much. We appreciate it. We'll come back shortly.
Yeah, and let's get back to Melinda Jackson for some reaction. Melinda, I want to ask you about kind of what's next, because now it's up to the Mayor London Breed, to announce and appoint his replacement. But also at the same time, a lot of eyeballs are going to be on the mayor saying, okay, let's see some change.
Right.
Yeah, it will definitely be interesting to see who she appoints as a successor, and then, what happens in November with, electing a permanent replacement. My thought is that it's going to be someone a little more moderate, but, who may still be on board with at least some of the reforms that Boudin has started. The voters did support reform of the criminal justice system, and we know that prosecutors play a really important role in that. And again, I think voters are getting more savvy about understanding the importance of these local DAs in these criminal justice patterns and outcomes.
Yeah, we heard, for the first time, probably most voters heard things about charging rates versus diversion versus, how
cash
things
bail
were adjudicated and cash
right.
bail and all these issues. Let me turn your attention. Liz made a great point or question about the future for London Breed and what it says in the city. What I think has been fascinating to watch, Melinda, and I love your reaction to this, over the last couple of years, starting even before the pandemic, but then as things began to ease, there was people sort of got a little fed up with how bad the homeless situation was getting. The mayor declared a state of emergency in the Tenderloin to solve the drug problem. We were kind of loping along for a while, putting up with the kinds of things that we often put up with in San Francisco in terms of crime, drugs, and homelessness, all the car break-ins. But we reached a tipping point where I think even those who tend to be more in the Chesa Boudin camp, looking for other ways besides a strict, hardcore punishment of crime, had enough. And I think that may have come back to bite, certainly Chesa Boudin, but I think even people in the city who were not particularly worried about it or hardcore about cracking down on crime changed. I heard a lot of people sort of feel very differently than they did just a couple of years ago, sick and tired of it.
That's right. And I think some of it, maybe going through the pandemic and, spending so much time isolated and then coming back out in public and, seeing how bad some of these problems have become with homelessness, drug use, mental health issues. And so I think people really are looking for a different approach. I think these problems have reached a critical level in San Francisco and down here in the South Bay as well. And I think people are looking for different solutions because what has been tried so far does not seem to be working.
At the same time, though, and I'm just riffing here, but as Chesa Boudin and his supporters would argue, and we heard that from the interview that our colleague Stephanie did earlier, who's there with some of his supporters, some of Chesa Boudin's policies are not solely Chesa Boudin's policies. There's state law now enacted by Governor Newsom that does require judges give diversion programs instead of incarceration. And so we're seeing more diversion up and down the state of California. Is it fair to say that people are just putting their anger and outrage onto Chesa Boudin, but that it's really not necessarily his policies specifically that are leading to these issues?
Yeah, and I think that, again, we haven't really had time to see whether these new approaches will be effective. Certainly things aren't going to change overnight or even within 6 months or a year. It does take time to see the results of these different approaches play out. So I think, it is completely fair to say that Chesa Boudin was, really singled out and blamed for, a lot of policies and a lot of problems that were not of his making, really, that preceded him and that will continue. And so now we're going to see, a new DA come in and take a slightly different approach. And my hope would be that, we do give things enough time to really see whether the new approaches can be effective. But I think the voters are really expressing the kind of pent-up frustration that a lot of people are feeling right now in general.
Yeah.
Right.
And somebody, there has to be a face on it, right? I mean, somebody has to be held accountable ultimately, fairly or not fairly. But going forward, we talk about how people, and we've all heard it, we've reported on it so many times in the last couple of years, people becoming increasingly concerned with where the city of San Francisco is going in terms of all the crime, the car break-ins, the robberies and everything else, and homelessness and drug use. And yet, voter turnout is pretty low. you know, even on this question. Voter turnout really is pretty shabby, Melinda.
Yeah, you know, it's what can I say? We're always trying to find ways to increase voter turnout and to get people engaged with the democratic process. It can be a challenge, and I do think, again, we're in primary election. You know, we don't have a big exciting race at the top, and you know, I think there's a lot of fatigue as well. Again, coming out of this pandemic, or at this point after, you know, 2 years and counting, I think that politics is not necessarily the first priority for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. People just want to do something fun and not think about the real world for a change. What do you think, and you touched on it a little bit, but if you're London Breed, who do you appoint? What message do you take from this decision in terms of who you decide should take that job?
Well, I think we're going to have to wait and see what the mayor does on that. I hesitate to make predictions. So, you know, I think we're going to have to wait, and hopefully we'll know very soon, maybe even tomorrow. But again, I think that it will be a more moderate approach. And I do think we're going to be hearing a lot around the country about this election result and the message that it sends, that even in San Francisco, people are you know, coming a little bit more back to center and have maybe reached their limit of tolerance for trying extremely progressive prosecution policies.
Right. I think it's interesting. I've noticed even recently a more tough on crime tone from the mayor, from London Breed. Her recent appointment after Matt Haney left his Board of Supervisors seat, she appointed someone who worked at the San Francisco Police Department and is, you know, quote, pro-police. And we're hearing that kind of rhetoric from her. And so it feels like she's noticing what voters want, noticing that maybe this, what we're seeing tonight, was inevitable, and she's trying to change her tone a little bit.
Remember, Liz, remember that news conference where she swore about it, actually? I don't remember exactly what she said, but there was a clear sense of she's fed up.
Right.
Right, and I think that's, you know, she's paying attention to her political image as well, and not wanting to be tarred with the same brush, you know, really wanting to establish her credentials as being, you know, willing to take a firmer approach, which is responding to where public opinion is right now, as opposed to a couple years ago.
All right. Melinda, stand by. Thanks so much, Melinda Jackson. We appreciate your insight as always. We'll come back.
All right, we want to get back to where the recall supporters are gathering. That's Mary Jung right there, one of the main people leading the recall effort. She's about to give a victory speech. Take a listen.
I just want to make sure that we give a thank you to all the voters of San Francisco. 12 months going into this campaign, and they are the ones who said, yes, we need a safer San Francisco. So thank you to all the voters. So I'm a lifelong Democrat, and I have spent my entire life fighting for democratic values, San Francisco values. I started this campaign about 14 months ago, and I joined it because I knew that San Francisco was in trouble, we needed change, and that San Francisco would support a Democratic-led campaign to bring about a safer San Francisco. So I heard from many San Franciscans and a diverse group of San Franciscans throughout the city, small business people, neighborhood, community people, friends, family, community leaders, and they all do that. We're talking about how public safety was an issue in San Francisco, and they wanted to be safe. And so thank you to the voters for hearing all of our concerns and making sure that we won tonight at the ballot. San Franciscans from every neighborhood and every background sent a loud and clear message today. Voters said loud and clear that they want a district attorney who prioritizes public safety for every community. San Franciscans are engaged and well informed. We know that we can have important criminal justice reform and public safety for all, and that neither was being achieved under this district attorney. The voters also didn't fall for Chesa's misleading claims that the recall was a con and part of some national Republican-led effort. This was an effort. This was an effort driven by and supported by San Franciscans who were fed up with Chesa Boudin's failed leadership and the impact it was having on our communities and cities. Election results show that San Franciscans and Democrats of all stripes from every single neighborhood want new leadership to manage a DA's office that has been thrown into chaos. San Franciscans want leadership to hold serious, violent, and repeat offenders accountable while never forgetting the rights of victims and their families. This election does not mean that San Francisco has drifted to the far right on our approach to criminal justice. In fact, San Francisco has been a national beacon for progressive criminal justice reform for decades. And we will continue to do this under new leadership. San Francisco will never become what Chesa falsely threatened it would become if he was recalled. By recalling Boudin from office, San Francisco can now move forward.
All right, we're listening to Mary Jung. She is one of the lead organizers of the campaign to recall Newsom. That's her victory speech there. Mary Jung, you could hear she was saying that this is not a Republican effort, and she got cheers from the crowd. They were booing the idea that these were Republicans leading this effort. She is a registered Democrat. In fact, I first met her covering the Biden campaign. She was out there campaigning for Biden and Kamala Harris. So again, they're saying these are Democrats leading this effort to recall Boudin.
And what she was saying is that these are Democrats who want more accountability from the district attorney's office. And as she put it, victims and their families remembered in that process as well and supported. Let's go now to ABC 7 News reporter Stephanie Sierra. She's in San Francisco live as well, where District Attorney Chesa Boudin and his supporters have been gathering. Stephanie?
Yes, Jan, this is a historic moment for San Francisco. Chesa Boudin, now the first and only DA to be successfully recalled here in San Francisco. And for his supporters, it comes with a very somber reality. This is a huge blow to restorative justice in their eyes. I just spoke with San Francisco Supervisor Hillary Ronan, who says this is really going to move backwards. All the work that DA Boudin has put in to ending his platforms that he ran on, ending mass incarceration and cash bail, she believes those were crucial to how we have moved forward. He has become one of the main faces of the progressive prosecutor movement nationally, and it's his exact platform that is now costing him his job. We are expecting him to arrive here at the watch party any moment now to speak to his supporters. But as I mentioned, part of understanding where we are today, a big conversation of what his supporters have had, is understanding where Boudin came from. He's 41 years old, and he was raised by both parents who were in prison. They were a part of the Weather Underground organization, which was flagged by the FBI in the 70s as a terrorist organization. Many of his critics say it was those foundations of his platform that has caused him to form the policies that have left the state of San Francisco as it is today. But tonight, it is a very somber feeling here. I got to tell you, the people really thought that he had a chance. They were hoping that potentially that 14% undecided would curry favor. But at this point, the polls are out, and it has been called. And I think there's going to be a lot of questions now about what happens for Boudin next. And Supervisor Ronan said that she doesn't know. She doesn't think there is a next. She says his next should be the San Francisco District Attorney, which is what he was elected to be in 2019, 2.5 years in, facing a fierce recall, which has now let him out of office. So, of course, we hope to hear from him tonight about what is next for him. And, of course, the potential appointments that Mayor London Breed will be releasing within up to 2 weeks. They have to wait till every ballot is certified before any announcement can be made. In the meantime, again, as I mentioned, any moment now, Boudin will be walking out to speak to his supporters. So for now, I'll send it back to you in the studio. If you have any questions, I'm happy to stay on with you guys. But we'll come back as soon as he comes out.
Okay, well, we'll come back, Stephanie, a few minutes. We'll move on for a moment, get to a couple of other matters, but we'll come back to you as soon as the soon-to-be former district attorney apparently comes out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steph. All right, I think we have results now for Proposition C, which is the proposition Steph was telling us about earlier in our newscast. This is a proposition in San Francisco that would do two things. It would make it harder to bring a recall against a candidate, and it would also mean that a candidate who is appointed, so like for instance, whoever Breed appoints to replace Boudin, that person would then not be able to actually run in the general election. And so let's see the results here. Proposition C, recall timelines, 39% voting yes, 61% voting no, 5% of the estimate total vote is in there, but obviously it's looking like this proposition is not going to pass. And Dan, that's fascinating because it just shows Californians, San Franciscans, we like our recalls. We want to have them. We do. And, you know, Governor Newsom last year survived a recall that was a very strong recall against him, but he did survive it. But in the case of Chesa Boudin, people apparently in San Francisco want the ability to pull the reins back on someone they're dissatisfied with. Right.
We're waiting for Chesa Boudin to come out and speak. We think it's going to be any minute, and we'll go to that as soon as it happens. But let's go back to some of the races that we are watching closely. The governor's race in California, no surprise. The incumbent Gavin Newsom, 61%. The Republican challenger, Brian Dahle, has 15% in the governor's race. This is not a surprise at all.
Yeah, and Dan, I want to just talk about that for a second because one of the candidates that people were kind of talking about is this Bay Area author, Michael Schellenberger. He wrote the book San Francisco, Why Progressives Ruin Cities. He was running as a no party preference candidate. You can see here he's getting 3% of the vote, coming in 4th place right now. And there was thought that if he could get that number 2 spot and run against Newsom, that he would give Newsom some run for his money, that there might be a lot of Democrats who are looking for an alternative and maybe no party preference is the way to go. I think if there's a takeaway tonight, we're seeing that right now no party preference candidates are not really viable in statewide races.
It would appear so.
Right.
Absolutely. All right, now to the Attorney General race that we're following. Appointee Rob Bonta hoping to hold on to his seat. Looks like he will, but still early, 59% over Nathan Hochman, the Republican. Rob Bonta also for this race, keep in mind the top 2 vote getters will move on to November. So that's where we're headed, it looks like. But Rob Bonta doing very well tonight with 59% of the vote.
Yeah, and this was also a race where there was a no party preference candidate who obviously does not appear to be moving on to the general. Let's look at the Senate race right now. This is the U.S. Senate who will fill the rest of Alex Padilla's seat. He is the incumbent appointed by Governor Newsom. It looks like he is winning this handily right now with 58% of the vote, 19% for Republican Mark Muser. And if we want to look at the full-term U.S. Senate seat, they're both running at the same time. Alex Padilla, once again, same results, 58% supporting him, 13% supporting Republican Mark Muser. It sure is hard, Dan, when you see these results. You see how so hard it is for a Republican to win a statewide race.
All right, well, it is indeed very hard. And let's go back now in San Francisco Live. This is District Attorney Chesa Boudin, who has been recalled tonight. He is going to, it's a tough night as for an individual, as you can imagine, embarrassing and difficult and hard to take. But his supporters have rallied around him. We think he's going to speak here to his supporters. And let's listen in.
Does. Oh, I love you too. Am I saying something? Is this?
I think you're introducing me,
Okay.
but this mic is not live. It's just for the, so you have to speak loudly.
Okay.
That mic is just for the media and be able to record it. That's all right. It's all right. It'd be nice if we had some progressive here in the crowd, but...
Okay. Here are the results for Proposition H, the recall of Chesa Boudin. 61% say yes, Chesa Boudin should be removed from office. 39% saying no. 33% of the precincts reporting, but this has already been called by ABC News, Chesa Boudin being recalled tonight.
And there he is with Hillary Ronen, one of the Board of Supervisors, who was by his side supporting him. It is a tough night for a candidate like this. This is somebody who, in a sense, you could say, for the progressive prosecutor movement, was a rising star. 41 years old, made national headlines as being one of the faces of this new movement, and now his future is rather uncertain.
His future, and to some degree, it's a referendum on his movement,
Yeah.
and that it many believe did not work in San Francisco. So many voters in San Francisco believing another direction is necessary, a tougher approach to crime perhaps necessary in San Francisco.
Absolutely. And you know, London Breed, the mayor, never took a stance in this race. Unlike the school supervisor race, the Board of Supervisors there, she did, the school board, excuse me, she did take a stance there. She came out against it. This one she didn't, which seems strategic, but
it also, they didn't really get along. She didn't like him too much, and by staying out of it, it in a way was an anti-endorsement. I mean, she made a statement by not making a statement.
Absolutely made a statement by not making a statement, and also the fact that the second she was able to appoint a Board of Supervisors, she appointed someone who immediately took the position and then came out in favor of the recall. So that was making a statement as well, but I think all eyes are now going to be on the mayor. And are things going to change now that this district attorney is gone? Obviously, supporters of this recall do firmly believe that the direction of the city will change, but there's going to be a lot of pressure now on the mayor.
Yeah, there is indeed, and he is getting a impassioned speech. We hope to hear from him. The fight will continue. He'll be coming back. We shall see, but that's what she's saying. We're hoping. Let's listen in for a little bit. We hope Chesa Boudin will speak.
We are not going to stop when the vast majority of people that are rotting behind bars are black and brown.
Yes, yes. We won't stop. 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 We won't stop.
Thank you. And most importantly, we will not stop when our democracy is being hijacked by billionaires.
Yes, yes, yes.
2 years ago, 2 short years ago, in the middle of a pandemic, the people of San Francisco had a choice before us. We had several different candidates. They told us exactly what they stood for. They told us exactly what they were going to do. And they told us exactly how. And guess what? We chose Chesa.
Yes, 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 yes.
And unlike most politicians, he kept his promises to us. He did exactly what he told us he was going to do. He ended cash bail. He ended gang enhancements. He stopped charging juveniles, kids, as adults. He created an innocent commission to make sure we didn't get it wrong and we're incarcerating innocent people in jail. And most importantly, and this is a near and dear to my heart, he wanted people suffering from mental illness and drug use disorder to get treatments, not incarceration. He did everything he said he was going to do. And some billionaires, because it didn't, match their interests, decided to spend $6 million in an off-year election where only 20% of San Franciscans vote to end this justice crusade. And we are mad about it. But right now, what we all need to do and what we all need to say is thank you, Chesa Boudin. Thank you so much. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you. No, because this is a family sacrifice. Believe me, I know. Thank you, Valerie. We love you. We believe in you. And we're going to be right beside you tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, Chesa Boudin, our district attorney.
You know, I see a few cameras here. I think we must be part of a pretty important movement. What do you all say?
The whole world is watching.
You know, when this recall started, my wife Valerie said to me, "I know we're going to win." And she's right. She's always right. And the reason I knew and I know today that she was right is because this was never about one vote count. It was never about one election night party. It was never about specifically which person gets to be in the office of the district attorney. This is a movement, not a moment in history. And I want to be really, really clear about the work that all of you, everybody here, and so many who can't be here today have done to get us to this moment, to get us to where we are today and where we're going to continue to go in the weeks and the months and the years ahead. The coalition that we built, that's represented in this space tonight, it is broad, it is diverse, it is strong, and it is a coalition that is deeply committed to justice. People come to this movement for different reasons, right? Our nurses fighting for health care to save lives. Our teachers and our educators fighting to make sure we can break the school to prison pipeline. All of our retired judges who dedicated their lives to administering the laws on the books and making sure justice is served. The labor movement that recognizes that until we enforce laws equally, including against billionaires in their boardrooms who systematically steal from working people, we can never have a true justice system. I grew up with two sets of parents. I grew up in two different worlds, right? One immersed in all of the opportunities of privilege, and another shackled to a existence mired in degradation and humiliation, one known to far too many Americans because of our addiction to caging human beings. And one of the things that I've seen over the course of this campaign, over the course of all the years that I've spent working in San Francisco's justice system, is that we have two cities. We have two systems of justice. Right? We have one for the wealthy and the well-connected and a different one for everybody else. And that's exactly what we are fighting to change. Over the course of the last 18 hours and 18 days and 18 months, I've been everywhere in San Francisco. We made more than 10 different stops today alone. I don't know how our campaign team squeezed them all in, but they did. And no matter whether I was in the projects in Double Rock, at Balboa BART Station, in the inner Sunset, in the Mission District, in the Castro, all across our great city, I heard a righteous outrage from people who are frustrated with 2 years of pandemic, who are frustrated with corruption in City Hall, with people who are sick and tired of living their lives in masks and behind closed doors and having a city that fails to deliver on some of its core promises. And people are right to be frustrated. There's so much room for improvement. People should hold all of us to a higher standard. We must continue to do more better for people, whether it's the mother who was outraged because her son had been murdered years ago and was still waiting for justice. Whether it was the lady I met living out of her car who asked me if I could help her get housing. She begged me for housing. Where is the housing? Whether it was the man on the street on 3rd and Paloux who said he dedicated his life to fighting for environmental justice in Bayview Hunters Point, and he was still waiting for answers as to why so many of his neighbors were dying of cancer. People are angry. They're frustrated. And I want to be very clear about what happened tonight. The right-wing billionaires outspent us 3-1. They exploited an environment in which people are appropriately upset. And they created an electoral dynamic where we were literally shadow boxing. Voters were not asked to choose between criminal justice reform and something else. They were given an opportunity to voice their frustration and their outrage, and they took that opportunity. We've made mistakes. We've learned a lot. And I am so unbelievably appreciative of everybody in this crowd, of everybody in this movement. And I want to start by thanking the folks on our campaign team. Can we give it up for them? Everybody who joined our team, some of them quit their jobs to do it. Some of them volunteered countless hours. Some of them spent unthinkable amounts of time away from family and friends, sleeping in a campaign office, sacrificing their own health, losing weight, gaining weight. In some cases, we're not naming names, don't worry. These folks, some of them young idealist activists, some of them grizzled ancient hippies. They joined our team not because they thought there was an easy path to victory, not because they thought we were going to outraise the billionaires when it came to fundraising, not because they thought there was another candidate we were running against who was worse. They joined our team because they believed in fighting for justice. Now, I was really privileged over the course of these last several months to win the support of so many different groups and people I could not possibly name and thank them all. Some of them were behind us because they really believed in the specific policies we were fighting for. Some of the ones that Supervisor Ronan mentioned moments ago. Others were in this fight because they recognized the dangers of recalls and the ways in which they undermine our democracy and take power and choice away from voters. Others were in this movement simply because they believed in the work that my team was doing around victim services and around protecting small businesses and increasing language access and standing for our immigrant communities. But I want to reflect for one moment on a person I spent far more time with in the last few days than I'd spent in the last 20 years. A man named Reverend Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson was visiting San Francisco this past weekend. I had the opportunity to meet with him, to have breakfast with him yesterday. Maybe it was Sunday. The days are blurring together. Sunday, thank you. I'm glad somebody's paying attention to my schedule. And Reverend Jackson is someone who obviously needs no introduction, whose legacy will last through the generations. But one of the things he said was, no on H, no on hell. And Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Jackson, has a custom, has a habit when he speaks of asking people to repeat after him 3 times. He asks you to say what he said, and then he says it again, and then he says it again. And so I want to ask all of you, in his spirit, in his honor, I want to ask all of you to repeat after me for a minute. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. Justice. Justice. Justice is on our side. Is on our side. Is on our side. Our cause is righteous. Our cause is righteous. Our cause is righteous. And we have already won. And we have already won. And we have already won. Now let me tell you why we've already won, folks. Let me tell you why we've already won. We have already won because we are part of a national movement that recognizes we can never incarcerate our way out of poverty.
Chesa Boudin, eloquent and passionate in defeat tonight. He will be recalled by voters in San Francisco as district attorney. And Liz, you and I were talking a great speech from him tonight, and you met him personally, spent some time with him. It occurs to me that what he was talking about tonight, his supporters certainly love to hear, and it represents everything that he believes so deeply in, but it was exactly opposite in some respects of what people who voted to recall him believe in terms of how we need to deal with crime in San Francisco.
Absolutely. In fact, he flat out said while he was talking about his childhood, his parents were incarcerated. He grew up while they were incarcerated, and he was talking about continuing the fight for criminal justice reform. And he said that the country, our country, has a, quote, addiction to, quote, caging human beings. And I tweeted that quote, and someone immediately responded and said, that's the problem. That's why we recalled him. So he's talking about his movement, but we're seeing from voters tonight that a lot of voters are ready for a different movement.
Yeah, and it certainly reflects a sense of frustration in the city by some that crime has gotten out of control and it was not being dealt with effectively. We'll see if whoever the mayor appoints makes a difference in that respect, and whether the recall of Chesa Boudin actually has the impact that those who voted to do it intended. But it is a done deal tonight. Chesa Boudin recalled. Anyway, a lot of interesting things happening. We've tried to touch on as much of it as we can here, but that concludes our live stream this evening. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dan Ashley.
And I'm Liz Kreutz. We're going to continue to update poll results on our website, abc7news.com, and you can tune in for ABC7 News at 11 on air for more live team coverage. Have a great night.